Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the Vice Chair yielding. Last Tuesday, December 7th, the Select Committee received a letter from Mr. Meadows' lawyer telling us that his client's appearance for a deposition had become, and I quote, untenable. Something else happened last Tuesday. Mr. Meadows' book, The Chief's Chief, hit bookstores. This is a witness who's refusing to comply with the law and answer our questions in part because the former president has instructed him to do so. He says that as chief of staff, he couldn't possibly disclose the conversations with the former president. But look at his book and you get more information about his confidential conversations with the former president than our committee did. This is from a section dealing with January 6th rally at the Ellipse. When he got off stage, President Trump let me know that he had been speaking metaphorically about the walk to the Capitol. He knew as well as anyone that we couldn't organize a trip like that on such short notice, end quote. That part is interesting because the Select Committee has a lot of questions about what the president said and did on January 6th. We have a lot of questions about how protests that day escalated into a riot. And Mark Meadows says he can't discuss these details with us, but apparently he can put them in his book. We've also learned from those very documents Mr. Meadows turned over that he was willing to discuss what the president was thinking with members of Congress. On January 3rd, Mr. Meadows was exchanging text messages with a lawmaker about the pressure campaign to get state legislatures to overturn the results of the election. In one text message to a lawmaker, Mr. Meadows wrote, he presumably being President Trump, quote, he thinks the legislatures have the power, but the VP has power too, end quote. The power to do what? We could guess the power to overturn the election results, the power to reject the will of the voters. And days later, a violent mob tried to get Vice President Pence to do just that. We'd like to ask Mr. Meadows about that, about what the former president thought. Days before the violent attack, Mr. Meadows was willing to share what he, President Trump, thinks, but he won't tell us. That's why Mr. Meadows' testimony is so important. That's why his privilege claims are so outrageous, and that's why we need to adopt this resolution. I yield back.
The gentleman from Mississippi.